It had the bland, recycled paper smell of absolute tyranny. This, I knew, was not a welcome to the neighborhood fruit basket. This was a letter from the Homeowners Association. I was standing at my mailbox, just trying to enjoy the 1/8 of a second of peace between getting home from work and walking into the house to discover the dog had eaten a pillow. I held the beige envelope up. It was so thin, you could almost see the passive aggression through the pulp. "Leo, are you coming in?" Sarah, my wife, called from the porch. She was watering a fern that had been dead for, conservatively, 6 weeks. She called it optimism. I called it watering a corpse. "Got one," I said, waving the envelope. "Oh, God. What is it this time? Is the grass a 1/4 inch too tall? Did you leave the recycling bin out for an extra 5 minutes?" "Worse, I think. It feels architectural." I ripped it open, right there on the lawn. My eyes scanned the boilerplate, "Dear Resident" crap, and went right for the bolded part. I had to read it twice. "You're not going to believe this," I said, walking up the driveway. "Try me," Sarah said, tapping the dead fern. "Mrs. Petrov's cat pooped on our lawn again." "I'd trade for the cat poop." I read the key line aloud. "Dear Mr. Henderson, the Architectural Review Committee has noted a non-compliant hardscape modification at 1422 Briarwood Lane." "A hardscape modification?" Sarah finally put the watering can down. "Did you build a gargoyle? I told you that gargoyle idea was tacky." "I never built the gargoyle, and Goliath would have been tasteful. No, they say, and I quote, 'The driveway surfacing exceeds the standard community footprint by approximately 8 feet. Sarah blinked. "What?" "They're fining us." "For what?" "They say my driveway is too fat." Sarah looked at our driveway. I looked at our driveway. It was, to be fair, a magnificent beast. When we bought this 90s builder-grade special, it had a cracked, single-car driveway that looked like a sad, gray tongue sticking out of the house. We have 2 cars, my Accord and her Subaru. It was a daily game of musical cars, shuffling them back and forth. So I called a contractor, a guy named Rick, who had a beard full of sawdust and a philosophy on life that centered on over-engineering. I can still hear the conversation. We were standing on the cracked concrete, and I was just asking for a simple re-pour. "Look, Leo," Rick had said, spitting. "I can re-pour this standard 10-footer. It'll be fine. It'll crack again in 5 years, but it'll be fine." Or, he'd leaned in, like he was selling me uncut diamonds. "I just finished a job at the new golf course clubhouse. They over-ordered on these high-end charcoal pavers. Like, way over-ordered. My supplier is trying to get rid of them." "Pavers?" I'd asked. "Not just pavers, Leo. These are commercial grade. You could park a boat on this thing. I can give them to you for half price. We could do a full, beautiful 20-foot double wide. Park both your cars side by side. Hell, you could host a small block party on it." "Park a boat," I'd whispered. "I don't own a boat. I don't want to own a boat. A boat is a hole in the water you throw money into. But the idea of owning a boat, the capability, that's what sells you." So, 3 days later, I was the proud owner of a charcoal gray tarmac. It was glorious. Smooth, perfect, and wide enough to land a small aircraft. It was, without question, the nicest driveway on the entire block. And now, according to this beige piece of recycled hatred, it was not in harmony with the neighborhood's aesthetic. "Not in harmony?" I sputtered. "My driveway is a symphony, a beautiful charcoal gray symphony. Her house," and I knew exactly who this was from, "is painted aggressive peach, That's not in harmony with anything except a 1980s Florida motel. I looked across the street. There she was. Brenda. Brenda, the HOA president. She was inspecting her mailbox, which I'd already seen her check twice that afternoon. She was pretending not to watch me. She had a visor on, pulled low. "Leo," Sarah said, using her "please don't start a war with the neighbors" voice. "This is insane," I said, crumbling the letter. "The letter says I have to remediate the non-compliant portion within 14 days. Remediate? What does that mean?" "It means," I said, my voice getting tight, "that she wants me to dig up 10 grand worth of pavers. She wants me to rip out half my beautiful driveway and plant, what, more beige grass? More harmony?" $50, Sarah said, pointing to the fine print. $50 per day after 14 days. Oh, I see the fine print. "Leo," Sarah sighed. "Just go talk to her. Be nice. Don't be you. Just be normal and nice, and explain that it's an improvement." I looked at my glorious driveway. I looked at Brenda, who was now pretending to pick a weed from a perfectly mulched flower bed. "Fine," I said, tucking the letter into my back pocket. "I'll go be nice, but nice is how this all started. Nice is why I let Rick talk me into a driveway the size of a helicopter pad in the first place. Nice was over." I marched across the street. I called it the walk of shame, but I wasn't ashamed. I was pre-annoyed. I was walking into a battle I'd already lost, armed with nothing but logic. And logic, in an HOA dispute, is like bringing a spork to a gunfight. Brenda was now deadheading a rose bush. The rose bush was perfectly healthy, but she was snipping at it with a pair of red-handled clippers, wielding them like she was disarming a bomb. Snip, snip, snip. Each snip was a tiny punctuation mark of "I am in charge here." "Morning, Brenda," I said, stopping at the edge of her perfectly compliant, builder-grade, cracked driveway. She didn't look up. Snip. "Mr. Henderson." "Got your letter," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Very informative. Harmonious was my new word for the day." Snip. She finally turned, pushing her visor up. Her eyes were small and suspicious. "I trust you found it. Clear. The committee wants to avoid fines, if possible." "Oh, if possible is great. I love if possible. Look, Brenda, it's just a driveway. It's made of high-end pavers. It's professionally installed. It actually raises property values for everyone. It's nice." This was the wrong word. "It is not nice," she said, the word nice sounding like an insult. "It is non-compliant. The bylaws, which you received and signed at closing, are perfectly clear. Section 4, subsection B, visual harmony and hardscape limitations. All driveways are to be standard builder grade width, which is specified as 10 feet. Brenda, the standard builder, went bankrupt in 2008. His standard was whatever's cheapest. The standard now is not crumbling into dust. My neighbor, Tom O'Malley, he has 2 rusted-out El Caminos on his lawn. Is that harmonious?" Brenda's lips tightened. Snip, snip. Mr. O'Malley's automotive collection is a separate and ongoing investigation with the committee. His violations do not excuse yours. Your driveway is a structural violation. It visually widens the entire lot line. It's pavers. It's gray. I was losing my nice fast. "What if I compromise? What if I plant some bushes? You know, a harmony hedge? We can line the edges with some nice azaleas. It'll make the driveway look narrower. See? Compromise. Brenda stopped snipping. She turned her entire body to face me. The full 1,000-watt glare of HOA authority. Bushes, she said, her voice flat. Yeah, nice, leafy bushes. You want to hide your violation with shrubbery. Well, when you say it like that, it sounds nefarious. I'm just trying to meet you halfway. It's an aesthetic issue, right? So let's fix the aesthetic. Mr. Henderson. Snip. She cut a perfectly good rosebud clean off its stem. The violation is the width. The pavers must be removed. All surfacing exceeding the 10-foot limit must be remediated. Remediated, I repeated. You mean dug up and replaced with dirt. The bylaws are clear. You have 14 days, or the fines begin. $50. Per day. She turned back to her murdered rosebush. Good day, Mr. Henderson. That was it. I was dismissed. I stood there for a second, my mouth open. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to ask if her aggressive peach paint was in the bylaws. I wanted to ask if her visor was harmonious. Instead, I just turned around and walked back across the street. Sarah was waiting at the window, pretending to wipe it down. She met me at the door. How'd it go? She asked, hopefully. She wants the pavers gone. She says I'm upsetting the visual harmony. Did you offer to talk to the committee? I offered her a shrubbery. Sarah stared at me. A shrubbery? Like Monty Python? It seemed like a good idea at the time. It didn't work. We're on the hook, Sarah. $50 a day, starting in 2 weeks. That's, what, $1,500 a month. Sarah's face went pale. $50. Leo, we have to fix it. That's our vacation fund. Call Rick. Call him right now and ask him how much it will cost to rip it all out. Fix it, right. I looked at my driveway. $10,000 of charcoal gray perfection glinting in the afternoon sun. I was supposed to just rip it up, surrender, bend the knee to Queen Brenda of the Beige Kingdom. $50 a day. I stared at the driveway. It was so wide, so gloriously, beautifully, offensively wide. I'll call Rick, I said. But I wasn't going to call Rick. $50 a day, I muttered to myself, walking inside. Fine. Let's see how much harmony she can afford. I spent the next 2 days in a silent rage. I'd go to work, I'd sit in meetings about synergy and leveraging assets, and all I could think about was hardscape modifications. I'd come home and just stare at the driveway. I was out there on the 3rd night, sitting on my HOA-compliant desert tan porch, drinking a beer. The sun was setting. The driveway was bathed in a soft, golden light. It wasn't just wide. It was majestic. It was a tarmac. You could land a Cessna on it. Sarah was inside, watching some reality show where people screamed at each other over cakes. Leo, are you just going to sit out there and stare at it? She'd called out. I'm thinking, I yelled back. And I was. Brenda's problem, her entire argument, was that it was a driveway. It was a private driveway that was too wide. She wanted it to be a smaller driveway. But what if it wasn't a driveway? I looked at the sheer, glorious 20-foot expanse of it. It was as wide as a single lane of traffic. In some parts of my town, it was wider. Wait a minute, I whispered to myself. If it's as wide as a road, maybe it should be treated like a road. And roads have rules. Roads have paint. The idea hit me like a bolt of petty neon yellow lightning. It was so beautiful, so simple, so compliant, maliciously compliant. I shot up from my chair. "Sarah!" I yelled, running into the house. The dog barked, startled. "Where's that safety yellow paint we bought when we were going to paint the garage steps?" Sarah looked up from the TV, where a woman was crying over a collapsed fondant. "We never bought that. You said it was too bright and looked like a crime scene." "What's going on? You have a crazy look in your eye." "I have an idea, Sarah. A beautiful, harmonious idea." I didn't call Rick. This was too petty for Rick. Rick was an artist, a paver pioneer. This required a different kind of professional. I went to my office and Googled parking lot striping near me. A moment later, I was on the phone with a company called Precision Parking Lot Striping. The guy who answered sounded like he was eating gravel. "Precision, what do you need?" "Hi, yeah," I said, trying to sound official. "I have a small, private job, a residential project." "Residential? We do lots, man. Malls, churches. We don't do, like, hopscotch." No, I need a bike lane. Yes, a bike lane." There was a long pause on the other end. "A bike lane?" "That's right. White lines, 3 feet wide, with a little bicycle stencil. Runs from the sidewalk up to my garage. About 60 feet. At your house. It's for the community," I said brightly. "Safety first. How much for the lane, with the stencil?" I don't know, 200, and I need 1 parking spot, standard size, white lines, and I need lettering." "Lettering like guest?" "No," I said, looking across the street at Brenda's darkened house. "I want it to say, 'Reserved for Karen.'" Another long, beautiful pause. I heard the guy cover the phone. "Hey, Mitch, this guy wants a bike lane on his driveway and a parking spot that says 'Reserved for Karen.'" I heard a wheezing laugh in the background. The guy came back on. "Yeah, we can do that. That's an extra 100 for the custom stencil. You want the big stencils or the small ones?" "The biggest ones you have," I said. "When can you get here?" "We're on a job, but for this, we'll be there in an hour." An hour later, a beat-up white van with "We Stripe Anything," no, seriously, spray-painted on the side, pulled up. 2 guys, Mitch and Gary, got out. They looked exactly like you'd expect. Stringy hair, stained t-shirts, and the unmistakable air of men who had been sniffing paint fumes since high school. "All right," Mitch said, chewing on an unlit cigarette. "Where's this bike lane going?" "Right here," I said, pointing. "Up the right side, from the sidewalk all the way to the garage." Mitch squinted at the massive driveway. "On your driveway, you bike a lot?" "It's for the community, Mitch. Safety first. Kids use this. Probably." "Uh-huh." Mitch was already grinning. He knew exactly what was happening. "And the spot?" "Right here," I said, pointing to the prime real estate on the left side. "Right next to the bike lane." "And the lettering, reserved for Karen?" "That's the one," Gary cackled. "This is gonna be awesome." "All right, man. Let's get the tape." I went inside. Sarah was in the kitchen. "Who are those men? They look like they're on a work release program." "They're contractors, honey. Hardscape artists. They're remediating." For the next 45 minutes, I watched from the window as they taped it all off. The loud hiss of the paint sprayer, the crisp, bright white lines, the perfect, adorable bicycle stencil. And then the pièce de résistance, the bold, 3-foot-high white letters, "Reserved for Karen." They finished up, collected their cash, which I happily paid, and peeled out, laughing all the way. It was a masterpiece. Just then, Sarah's Subaru pulled up. She'd gone to the store. She turned in, her headlights hitting the new art. She pulled into the garage, got out of the car, and just froze. She stood there, a bag of groceries in each hand. "Leo." "What do you think?" I said, walking out to join her. "Problem solved." "Leo, what did you do?" "I remediated. It's not a driveway anymore. It's a multi-use transit path. See?" I pointed. "It's got a bike lane. It's safe now. It's promoting community wellness." Sarah's eyes drifted, as if hypnotized, to the parking spot. "And that? Reserved for Karen?" "Leo, her name is Brenda." "I know," I said triumphantly. "It's an anonymous spot. For any Karen who feels the need to park and inspect things. It's generic, it's welcoming, it's harmonious." Sarah just sighed. It was a sigh that came from deep in her soul. She shook her head, groceries in hand. "You're going to jail," she said, walking past me into the house. "I'm making lasagna. I'm not going to be able to bail you out on an empty stomach." I didn't sleep well. Not because I was nervous, but because I was vibrating with the kind of giddy anticipation you usually only get as a kid on Christmas Eve. I was up at 6 a.m. I made a pot of coffee, the good stuff, not the cheap stuff, and I took my mug out to the porch. I sat. I waited. The sun came up. The sky turned from gray to blue. The paper boy, who is a 40-year-old man in a 2003 Toyota Camry, threw the paper onto my lawn, missing the driveway entirely, the animal. A jogger went by and did a visible double-take at my driveway, almost tripping. It was 8:15 a.m., showtime. Like clockwork, Brenda's front door opened. She emerged, visor on, clipboard in hand, a little fanny pack strapped around her waist. She was ready for her morning community patrol. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of coffee, and tried to look as casual as possible. "Here we go," I muttered. She started her usual route, marching down the sidewalk, clipboard at the ready. She was heading for the O'Malley's El Caminos, her first and favorite target. She hadn't seen it yet. She was on her own side of the street. "Come on, Brenda. Turn the head. See the harmony. Cross the street." She got to the end of her block, noted something on her clipboard, probably a non-compliant garden gnome, and then, as she always did, she crossed the street to patrol my side. She was still looking down, scribbling. She got to my property line, and she stopped, dead in her tracks. I watched, holding my breath. It was magnificent. It was like watching a nature documentary. The freeze. Her whole body just went rigid. The squint. She looked up, and her eyes narrowed. I could see her thinking, "The sun is in my eyes. This can't be right." The visor adjustment. She pushed the visor up, as if it was a faulty piece of equipment. The clipboard lower, the clipboard, her Excalibur, was lowered slowly to her side. The walk. She took 3 slow, hesitant steps onto my property. Oh yes, trespassing. I see you, Brenda. The Karen spot. She was now standing directly in the middle of the reserved for Karen spot. She looked down at the bright, white letters beneath her orthopedic sandals. The look. Her head snapped up. Her eyes found me, sitting on the porch. I gave her a friendly little wave and took a loud, obnoxious sip of my coffee. She didn't yell. Not at first. She was in shock. Her entire system was overloaded with non-compliance. Instead, she stomped. She stomped across the grass, bypassing the beautiful bike lane, and stood at the edge of my porch. Her face was white. Her lips were a thin, angry line. "What is this? Oh?" It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "Morning, Brenda," I said, putting my mug down. "Coffee? Just made a fresh pot." "What is this?" she shrieked, pointing at the driveway with a trembling finger. "Oh, that?" I said, feigning surprise. "Just promoting community safety. You were so right, Brenda. You really opened my eyes. You said the driveway was too wide. It just felt irresponsible, dangerous. This way," I gestured to the bike lane, "the neighborhood kids have a safe, clearly marked place to ride their bicycles, away from traffic." Brenda's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She was like a fish, if a fish wore a visor and smelled faintly of lavender. Her finger moved, jabbing at the parking space. "And that? Karen? Are you harassing me?" I put on my most wounded, innocent expression. "Brenda, why would you say that? Is your name Karen? I had no idea. I am so sorry if you thought— No, that's just— it's a generic guest spot. For, a specific type of visitor. The kind who feels the need to manage things. I thought it was welcoming." "This is a violation!" she finally roared, her voice cracking. "You have defaced your property! You've used non-compliant paint!" "Ah," I said, holding up a finger. "I'm glad you brought that up. I actually checked the bylaws last night. Section 7, Decorative Embellishments. It covers lawn ornaments, statues, like my poor rejected gargoyle, and surface treatments. But it says nothing about pavement striping or traffic control markings. It's a gray area, Brenda. Well, technically it's a white and yellow area, but legally it's gray." Brenda was vibrating. Her face was now cycling through various shades of red and purple, finally landing on a color that was a shade darker than her aggressive peach house. "You think you're so smart," she hissed. "I just read the bylaws you told me to read," I said, smiling. "You will be hearing from our lawyer. I am fining you. I am fining you for the driveway, and I am fining you for this graffiti! And I am calling the police! This is vandalism! This is targeted harassment!" She was screaming now. My neighbor, Tom O'Malley, peeked out from behind his El Camino. He gave me a thumbs up. "Vandalism?" I said, leaning forward. "On my own property? Brenda, that's a bold legal strategy. Are you calling 911 or the non-emergency line? I want to make sure I have my story straight." She just stared at me, her chest heaving. Then she spun around on her heel, pulling her phone from her fanny pack. "It's 911!" she shrieked. "For harassment!" She stomped off, furiously mashing buttons on her phone. "She's actually doing it," I said to myself, a slow smile spreading across my face. "She's calling the cops." I went inside. Sarah was standing in the kitchen, holding a wooden spoon, her face pale. I heard screaming. Was that Brenda? Yep. Did she see the driveway? Oh, she saw it. Is she okay? She's fine, I said, grabbing the bag of chips from the pantry. She's just calling the cops. What time is that lasagna going to be ready? This is gonna be delicious. Cops? Sarah shrieked, dropping the spoon into the sink. She's calling the cops? Leo, you've gone too far. This isn't funny anymore. They can arrest you for harassment. Harassment? I said, crunching on a chip. Have I? Or have I gone just far enough? I'm just a guy who's passionate about bicycle safety. And, Karens. Come on, Sarah. What are they going to do? Arrest me for aggressive paint? Just don't say anything when they get here. Let me talk. I'll tell them you're stressed. From work. I'm not stressed, I said, peering through the blinds. I haven't felt this good in months. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up. It didn't come with sirens blaring, thank God. It just cruised. It pulled to a stop right in front of my house, the engine idling with a tired-sounding rumble. This was clearly not a high-priority call. 2 officers got out. The first one, the driver, was Officer Miller. He looked to be in his late 50s, with a face that had seen every stupid thing this suburb had to offer, twice. He had a magnificent, "I'm too old for this" mustache. The second one, the passenger, was Officer Stokes. He was a rookie, looked about 12 years old, and had a pen and notepad out, like he was about to bust a major crime ring. Brenda, who had been waiting on her porch like a sniper, immediately marched back over, clipboard in hand. Miller and Stokes got out of their car. They looked at Brenda. They looked at my house. And then they saw the driveway. I watched from the porch. Miller just stopped. He looked at the bike lane. He looked at the "reserved for Karen" spot. He looked up at the sky as if asking God for strength. Officer Stokes, the rookie, whipped his head back to Miller, his eyes wide. I could see his shoulders shaking. He was trying so hard not to laugh. He disguised it as a cough, a very long, bark-like cough. "Afternoon, folks," Miller said, his voice pure, gravelly exhaustion. He slowly walked over, Stokes trailing behind him. "We, got a call about a parking dispute or harassment. The dispatcher wasn't super clear." Brenda pounced. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man," she pointed at me, "Mr. Henderson has defaced his private property specifically to harass me. It's a targeted attack. It's a slur." Officer Miller looked at her, then looked at me. I was still on the porch, leaning against the railing, the picture of innocence. "Sir?" Miller called over to me. "Is this your driveway?" "Last time I checked, officer," I said, walking down to the sidewalk. "Morning, officers. Beautiful day." "Sir," Miller said, pointing with his pen at the paint. Can you explain this?" "This? Oh, it's my new community safety project. The HOA president here, that's Brenda, by the way, not Karen, just to be clear, informed me in a very official letter that my driveway was too wide. Posed a potential hazard, you know. Far too much open space. So I took her concerns to heart, and I created a bike lane for the safety of the neighborhood children." Stokes, the rookie, had to turn his back. He was checking his radio. I could hear him snorting. Miller just stared at me. His mustache twitched. "A bike lane for the children." "That's right, officer." "Uh-huh." His eyes moved to the spot. "And the, Karen spot?" "Oh, that's just a guest spot, officer," I said, putting on my best, helpful citizen voice. "My cousin Karen is visiting next week. She's a lot. She's very difficult. Honestly, it's just easier for everyone if she has her own designated spot, you know? Keeps her from parking in front of the hydrant." "He's lying!" Brenda shrieked, her voice going ultrasonic. "He doesn't have a cousin Karen. He's calling me a Karen. It's a slur. It's Karen adjacent." "Karen adjacent," Miller repeated, his face blank. He looked at Stokes, who was now bright red. "Stokes, you ever heard of a Karen adjacent violation?" "No, sir," Stokes choked out. Officer Miller let out a sigh that seemed to deflate him by 2 inches. He pinched the bridge of his nose, right under his sunglasses. "Ma'am," he said, turning to Brenda. "Brenda, is your legal name Karen?" "No, but it means me. Everyone knows what it means. It's a meme." "Ma'am." Miller's patience was clearly gone. "This is paint on his private property. As far as I can tell, he hasn't broken any laws. Aggressive paint is not a crime. Writing a name on your own driveway, even if it's tacky is not a crime. This is not a police matter. This is an HOA matter. A very, very stupid HOA matter. So, you're not going to arrest him? Brenda sputtered. Arrest him for what? Miller said, his voice rising. Bad taste? Ma'am, half the houses in this neighborhood would be in cuffs, including… Well, never mind. Sir, he said, looking at me. You're technically not doing anything illegal. So, I'm not being detained for my traffic control measures? I asked politely. No, sir, you are not. Miller turned to Brenda. Ma'am, please stop calling 911 unless there is an actual crime, a real emergency. This is not one. This is an emergency! Good day, ma'am, Miller said. He tipped his hat to me. Sir. He and Stokes turned and walked back to their car. I watched them get in. As the cruiser pulled away, I saw Officer Stokes just lose it. He threw his head back and was pounding on the dashboard, laughing uncontrollably. Officer Miller just shook his head. My first real victory. I felt 10 feet tall. Brenda, however, looked like she was about to have an aneurysm. She was defeated, but not broken. She stood there, trembling, as the police car turned the corner. She spun on me. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you're clever. You think you've won. You haven't. Brenda, I am calling an emergency HOA meeting, the entire board. We will have our lawyer present. You will be fined into oblivion. We will put a lien on your house. You will rue this day, Mr. Henderson. She turned and stomped back to her peach-colored fortress, slamming the door so hard I thought her welcome sign might fall off. An emergency meeting. For paint. She was bringing out the big guns, the lawyers, the lien. Well, I said to myself, the smile fading just a little. She's escalating. I looked at my beautiful, ridiculous driveway. Fine, I can escalate too. I went inside, pulled out my phone, and scrolled to a different number. Hey, Rick. It's Leo. Yeah, the driveway guy. Look, I've got kind of a situation, and I need your help. How do you feel about signs? The next morning, Rick's heavy-duty truck pulled up. It was a beautiful, clean F-250 with Rick's paver and hardscape professionally lettered on the side. This was not Mitch and Gary's We Stripe Anything van. This was the big leagues. Rick got out. He's a big guy with that sawdust beard and a flannel shirt. He took one look at my driveway, with the bright yellow bike lane and the reserved for Karen spot, and he just stopped. He looked at it. He looked at me, standing on the porch. He looked back at the driveway. Then he started to slow clap. Clap, clap, clap. A huge grin spread across his face. Leo, he said, walking over. It's a masterpiece. The little bike guy, the lines? I didn't know you had it in you. I outsourced, I admitted, to a couple of guys who seemed artistically motivated. I'll bet. He nudged the Karen spot with his boot. So what's the problem? This looks like a problem-solved situation to me. It was, I said. But Brenda, the HOA president, she didn't appreciate it. She called the cops. She what? Rick roared with laughter. No, what did they do? Told her to stop wasting their time. But now she's escalating. She's calling an emergency HOA meeting. She's bringing in lawyers. She's threatening to fine me into the ground. She says it's defacement and harassment. I need to make it official. Rick's grin widened. He stroked his beard. Official? What, you want me to bring in a surveyor? Maybe a ribbon cutting? No, I need to take her arguments and shove them right back in her face. You said these pavers were from the golf course, right? They're commercial grade? Absolutely, Rick said. They're rated for heavy-duty cart traffic. You could drive a dump truck on them. Good. Then I need you to fix my driveway problem. She said it's defacement. I need to make it compliance. She said I need to remediate it. Rick leaned against his truck. I'm following you, Leo. What are we remediating? The Karen spot, I said. It's too ambiguous. It's the part that's getting me in trouble for harassment. I need to change it. To what? Brenda? No, I said. I need to make it more compliant. I need it to be a handicap spot. Full blue paint, white stencil, the whole 9 yards. Rick's jaw dropped. Leo, that's genius. That's also highly illegal. You can't just paint a fake handicap spot. Leo! Sarah yelled from the front door. She'd been listening. I heard that. You absolutely cannot paint a fake handicap spot. That's a federal crime. They will tow our cars from our own driveway. Are you insane? I held up a hand. Hold on. I reached into my wallet. I pulled out a small, laminated card and handed it to Rick. Rick looked at it. It's a temporary handicap placard. It's my Aunt Edna's, I said proudly. Remember when she visited last fall? The one with the bad hip? She left her temporary placard here by accident. I was supposed to mail it to her. And look, I pointed to the bottom. It's still valid for 3 more weeks. Sarah came out onto the porch. You're basing this entire plan on Aunt Edna's placard? It's not a fake spot if we have a real placard for it, I argued. We are legally allowed to have a temporary accessible spot for her impending visit, which she is impending. Soon. Probably. Rick looked from the placard to me, and a slow, beautiful smile of pure, unadulterated mischief spread across his face. Oh, this is the best day of my life, he whispered. A blue spot. ADA compliant. What else? That's not all, I said, feeling the momentum. The bike lane is a safety feature. The handicap spot is a legal requirement. But Brenda's other argument is that this is all defacement, and that it's my driveway. I need a sign. A sign? A real one. Metal, on a post, cemented into the ground right here by the sidewalk. I pointed to the grass. I wanted to say, private property, public access bike lane, yield to pedestrians. And here's the best part. HOA not responsible for injury or accident. Rick was wiping a tear from his eye. You're indemnifying them. You're protecting them from liability for the safety feature you installed to fix the problem they invented. Exactly, I said. How can she fine me for defacement when I'm actively protecting the HOA's financial interests? How can she argue against a handicap-accessible spot for my poor, sweet, impending Aunt Edna? Rick slapped his hand on the hood of his truck. I've got the blue paint. I've got the official stencil. I've got a sign printing guy who owes me a favor. And I've got a post hole digger in the truck. Let's do this. Sarah just groaned. I'm going back inside. I'm making a pitcher of margaritas. I'm not going to watch this happen sober. Make 'em strong, I called after her. For the next 2 hours, my driveway was a professional work site. Rick's crew, 2 guys who, unlike Mitch and Gary, actually looked like they knew how to use a level, showed up. They coned off the driveway. They got out the real equipment, a paint sprayer with a nozzle shield, a gallon of the most offensively bright, official ADA blue paint I have ever seen. They ground off the Karen letters. Then, they laid down the official handicap stencil. The hiss of the sprayer was the sound of victory. While they worked, Rick was digging a 2-foot hole in my lawn. He mixed a bag of quickset concrete. An hour later, a 6-foot-tall, reflective metal sign, white with black and green lettering, was standing guard at the end of my driveway. By 5 p.m., it was done. It was magnificent. The driveway was now a fully compliant, multimodal, accessible transit hub. On the right, a pristine white and yellow bike lane. On the left, a gloriously blue, ADA-compliant handicap parking spot. I even had Rick paint a "Reserved for L. Henderson" spot for myself in the middle. And at the entrance, the sign, "Private property, no trespassing. Public access bike lane permitted. Yield to pedestrians. Not responsible for injury or accident." I stood there, arms crossed, a margarita in hand. Sarah had come through. It was beautiful. I looked across the street. Brenda's blinds, the ones in her living room window, twitched. Violently. "She sees it," I said to Sarah. "Of course she sees it, Leo," Sarah said, sipping her own drink. "A blind astronaut could see it from space. It's harmonious," I offered. "The most obnoxious thing I have ever seen in my life," she said. But she was smiling. "Let her have her meeting. I'm actually looking forward to this." The community clubhouse was packed. It was a Wednesday night. Normally this room, with its beige folding chairs, beige walls, and beige linoleum floor, was empty, save for the occasional scrapbooking for seniors club. Tonight, it was standing room only. This was the Super Bowl of Briarwood Lane. The word had gotten out. This wasn't just about a driveway. This was about the paint. This was about the cops. This was about the sign. Leo versus Brenda, the main event. Sarah and I walked in. The room went dead silent. Every head turned. I saw Tom O'Malley, of the El Caminos, in the back. He gave me a subtle fist bump. I saw Mrs. Petrov, who gave me a dirty look. I think she blamed me for her cat's constipation. We took our seats, right in the front row. I wanted a good view. At the front of the room was a podium and a long folding table. Brenda was there, flanked by 2 other board members, a guy named Stan, who always looked confused, and a woman named Cynthia, who just seemed to silently hate everyone. "This meeting will come to order," Brenda said, banging a tiny, ridiculous gavel. She was wearing a power blazer. It was, of course, peach. "As you all know," she began, her voice tight, "we are here to discuss the egregious and ongoing code violations at 1422 Briarwood Lane." She had a projector. Oh God, she had a PowerPoint. She clicked to the first slide. It was a picture of my house. Pre-pavers. The compliant state, she called it. She clicked again. A picture of the new, too-wide driveway. Violation number 1, the non-compliant hardscape footprint, as we've discussed. "Point of order, Brenda," I said politely, not standing up. Brenda froze. "What?" "It was a non-compliant footprint, not hardscape. The materials themselves were never cited. Just want to keep the minutes accurate." Brenda's eye twitched. "Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Henderson. A violation he was given 14 days to remediate." She clicked again. The slide projector showed a grainy, zoomed-in photo of the reserved for Karen spot. The room gasped. "He then defaced his property with this," Brenda announced, her voice full of righteous fury. "A slur! A targeted attack against your board president! An act of clear and premeditated harassment!" An old man in the second row raised his hand. Uh, question. Brenda sighed. Yes, Mr. Gable? My granddaughter's name is Karen, he said, his voice wheezy. She's a lovely girl. I think it's nice he's saving her a spot. She has trouble parking. Brenda's face went crimson. It's not for his granddaughter, Mr. Gable. It's a meme. It's a derogatory term. He then wasted city resources by forcing me to call the police. Correction, I called out again, still smiling. You called the police, Brenda. They confirmed no crime was committed. Again, just for the minutes. Mr. Henderson, you will be silent until the board calls on you, she shrieked. She was losing the crowd. She needed her grand finale. She clicked the clicker, hard. The new slide hit the screen. It was her gotcha moment. A picture taken just that afternoon of the new driveway, the glorious blue handicap spot, the gleaming metal sign. The room exploded in murmurs. This was new. Aha! Brenda yelled over the noise. And now, this. As you can see, when his harassment failed, he doubled down. He has now created a fraudulent handicap parking space, which is a federal offense. The murmurs in the room turned dark. People were looking at me. That's a line, even for them. Faking a handicap spot. He has violated state, local, and federal law, Brenda continued, hitting her stride. And this sign. He is claiming his driveway is a public park. He is inviting liability. He is... Actually, I said, standing up, I think it's my turn. You will sit down, Mr. Henderson? No, I don't think I will. I walked to the front of the room, right next to her podium. I was holding two things, my copy of the HOA bylaws and Aunt Edna's small laminated placard. The room went silent again. Evening, neighbors, I said, my voice calm. I'm Leo. I'm the guy with the fat driveway. Brenda, thank you for this presentation. It's very thorough. You've got some great, high-res photos. I'm impressed. Brenda just fumed. Let's go through this, shall we? I said, addressing the room. You're all right. I was cited. I was told my driveway was too wide and not harmonious. I was told to remediate it. So I did. I looked at the problem. The first problem, as Brenda so loudly pointed out, was safety. A driveway that wide, as she noted, is a hazard. All that open space. So, I gestured dramatically. I used my own money to install a professional-grade, safety bike lane at no cost to the HOA, to protect the children. You're welcome. Someone in the back clapped. But then, I continued, Brenda and the board still weren't happy. So I moved to phase 2 of my remediation. Brenda, you've claimed I've created a fraudulent handicap spot. You've accused me of a federal crime. I held up the small blue placard. This, I said, is my Aunt Edna's temporary handicap placard. It is state-issued. It is valid for 3 more weeks. My aunt, who has a severe hip condition, is impending. She's visiting. Are you Brenda? I turned to her. As president of this homeowners association, prepared to formally and on the record deny an accessible parking space for my disabled elderly aunt? Because that sounds like a clear violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's a lawsuit I'd love to have. Brenda's face went white. The 2 other board members, Stan and Cynthia, leaned away from her. But, Brenda sputtered. The sign! You can't just put up a sign. Ah, yes, the sign, I said, my voice booming. This is my favorite part. Brenda, you and your committee created this problem. Let's follow the logic. You wanted me to remove half my driveway, correct? To make it 10 feet wide? Yes, she said, finding her footing. That is the compliant solution. And if I did that, I said, I have 2 cars. One would go in the garage. The other, where would it go, Brenda? On the street, of course, like other residents. The street. I'm so glad you said that. I opened the book of bylaws. According to your rules, Section 9, subsection C, parking. No resident shall park any vehicle on a public street overnight, as it impedes public access and street cleaning. Fines, $50 per day. I looked up at the room. You see my problem? Don't you? Brenda and the committee were trying to force me to violate Section 9 in order to satisfy her harmony clause in Section 4. They were fining me to force me into another fine. The room was not on Brenda's side anymore. I heard Tom O'Malley yell, "That's entrapment!" So I was trapped, I concluded. I can't park on the street. I can't have a wide driveway. The only logical solution was for the driveway to cease being a driveway. It is now, as the sign indicates, a private multi-use transit path. It's private property, so I pay for it and maintain it. But it's a path, so the driveway width rule no longer applies. The bike lane is a safety feature. The handicap spot is a legal requirement for my impending aunt. And the sign? I smiled. That's just to protect you, Brenda. To protect the HOA. If a kid falls off his bike in my bike lane, he can't sue the HOA. I've indemnified you. Again, you're welcome. Dead. Silence. Brenda's mouth was open. Stan looked like he was about to be sick. Then from a speakerphone on the table, which I hadn't even noticed, a tinny metallic voice spoke up. Brenda? Mr. Davies? Brenda said, tapping the phone. Our lawyer. He's been listening. Brenda, the tinny voice of Mr. Davies crackled. Is it true that Section 9 prohibits street parking? Well, yes, but it's complicated. It's not complicated, Brenda. Is it true? Yes. And, Mr. Henderson, the lawyer said, is it true that you, or your impending guest, have a valid, state-issued placard? She's arriving Thursday, I lied confidently. I can have her fax you her driver's license and the placard registration. Another long, tinny pause. Brenda, I am advising the board to table this discussion indefinitely. The HOA will not be issuing any fines regarding Lot 1422 and its transit path. In fact, I suggest we move to thank Mr. Henderson for his proactive safety measures and for limiting our liability. The room was silent for one more second. And then it erupted. Not in applause, in laughter. People were clapping. Tom O'Malley was whistling. Brenda's face, her beautiful, aggressive peach blazer, it all just collapsed. She grabbed her gavel, banged it, and yelled, "Meeting adjourned!" She all but ran out the side door. We walked out of that clubhouse like heroes. People were patting me on the back. Mrs. Gable, the old man's wife, came up and said, "That was wonderful, dear. You tell your Aunt Edna we hope she feels better." "Will do, Mrs. Gable. Thank you for the support." Tom O'Malley was waiting by the door. He gave me a massive, greasy-handed fist bump. "That, my friend," he said, "was a work of art. You stuck it to him. A multi-use transit path." "Just trying to be a good neighbor, Tom," I said. Sarah and I walked home, hand in hand, under the streetlights. "You're a menace," she said, squeezing my hand. "I know. Aunt Edna is impending?" "She is. She'll be here, sometime, in the next several years. Maybe. You lied to a lawyer, Leo." "I embellished for a lawyer, Sarah." There's a difference." "No, there isn't," she said. But she was laughing. "I'm proud of you. That was amazing. The harmony hedge was dumb. This was brilliant." The next morning I was back on the porch, my 6 a.m. coffee. But it wasn't a stakeout. It was a victory lap. I sat there, looking at my sign, looking at my bike lane, looking at my federally protected blue square of defiance. It was the most beautiful driveway in the world. Around 10 a.m., a kid from down the street, maybe 10 years old, came riding his Huffy down the sidewalk. He had streamers on the handlebars. He stopped at the end of my driveway. He looked at the sign. He looked at the bike lane. He looked up at me, on the porch. I gave him a slow, encouraging nod. A huge smile broke out on his face. He turned his bike, and vroom, he pedaled right up the bike lane. He circled around in front of my garage, dinging his little bell, ding, ding, and then rode back down to the sidewalk. "See, Sarah?" I yelled into the house. "Community, safety." I heard her just laugh from the kitchen. Life returned to normal. Well, a new normal. The HOA letters stopped. The fines never came. The aggressive peach house across the street was quiet. About a week later, I saw Brenda. She was out walking. No clipboard, no visor, just walking. She looked defeated. She walked past my house, pointedly staring at the other side of the street, at Tom's El Caminos, as if she'd rather look at them than at my property. I couldn't help myself. "Morning, Brenda," I called out cheerfully. "Lovely day. Very harmonious, don't you think?" She stopped. She turned. She looked at me. She looked at my sign. She looked at the blue spot. I saw her mouth tighten. She took a deep breath. And then, just loud enough for me to hear, she muttered, "Go to hell, Leo." She turned and fast walked away. I sipped my coffee. "Victory," I whispered. The aggressive peach house went up for sale 2 months later. They moved to a condo. No yard, no driveway. My driveway is still too wide. The bike lane is a permanent and surprisingly popular feature. And the handicap spot? Well, Aunt Edna's placard expired. But the paint? The paint is forever. It's a little faded now, but it's there. A beautiful blue monument to... what? To freedom? To property rights? No. It's a monument to the fact that you can't tell a man his driveway is too fat. It turns out my driveway wasn't too wide. It just wasn't complicated enough. And if there's one thing I'm good at, it's making things complicated. I was sitting on the porch with Sarah last night, watching the sunset paint the sky. "You know, honey," I said, tapping my foot on the glorious pavers, "Rick was right." "About what?" "You could park a boat on this thing. I've always wanted a boat." Sarah just looked at me. She didn't even sigh. "Don't.